and it came out as a documentary called Commercial Breaks, which we're going to be watching in a short time. I'm very pleased to welcome to Replay today Paul Anderson, who was the producer of that documentary, and also Bruce Everiss, who was the operations manager for Imagine through those heady days. So ladies and gentlemen, Paul and Bruce. Okay, Bruce, I'm going to start with you. Napoleon once described us as a nation of shopkeepers, and I believe that's exactly how you got into this computer games business, by setting up a shop at the end of the 70s in Liverpool called Micro Digital. What was it like running a shop at the end of the 70s when that was pre-Spectrum days? There wasn't very much to sell, surely.
Yes. I set up a computerised bookkeeping company. I'd set up a computerised bookkeeping company called Data Pool Services, Data, and it's in Liverpool. And then I started reading Computer Weekly, and there was all this stuff about this microcomputers happening in America, in California, and the S100 bus machines using 8080. And I studied it, and I thought, oh, they're opening computer stores. I'll do that, just like you do when you're young. So that's Micro Digital opened in 1978 on the 31st of July, and we sold a kit computer called the NASCOM. We sold Samsung Cambridge Mark 14s, which I got off Clive Sinclair, and we sold books like crazy, you just wouldn't believe. Everybody was hungry for knowledge because everything was so new. And I imported the books in bulk from the States and sold mountains and mountains of books. And then memory, 4 or 6 memory chips, short run cassettes. We sold tens of thousands of short run cassettes, C15s. So there's lots of things we could do. And there was also all sorts of things like the NASCOM kits had 1,200 solder joints on, so most of them didn't work. So we set up a fix-it service. You send us your NASCOM, whatever you've done to it, 50 quid, and we'll send it back to you working. And so that was a good profit centre. So we had fun.
You mentioned there that some of the computers you're selling involved doing 1,200 solder joints. I imagine you weren't getting kids wandering in buying these computers. It was actually coming into the shop.
There was a lot of people there who were radio and hobbyists, and they were quite keen. And then there was the people from academia. The Liverpool University had a very active microcomputing department, and they were very outgoing, and so they had a big involvement. And then they set up Liverpool Computer Club, and there was, and people flew to the shop from all over Europe. So, you know, we got, and people would come up from all over the UK driving to the shop to see it.
Sounds like it was a real meeting point. I'm interested in some of your employees that you had there. I understand that one of your employees was indeed Mark Butler, who went on to found Imagine. So what was that young lad like then?
I was a cocky, chirpy, self-confident salesman. I employed him as a salesman. You know, I mean, I've seen him fairly recently. He's still the same Mark Butler that I first employed in the shop.
Right, and also understand again someone that was going to see on this film later, Eugene Evans, who was one of the early coders for Imagine. So what was he doing then?
Well, I employed him when he was about 14 as the Saturday boy in the shop, you know, to make the coffee and what have you. And of course now he's very senior at Electronic Arts in America.
He's poised to well for himself, for sure. Now, I would like to ask then, at what point did your shop actually start selling computer games then?
I don't think we ever actually... I went to California to see what the American computer stores looked like compared to ours. And they had something there called an Apple, and at the back of the shop there was this notice board, and on this notice board were polythene bags, and in the polythene bags were cassettes. And these were games that people had made at home and were selling through the notice board in the computer store. And I think they were the first ever commercial computer games. And I bought a whole pile of those back, and we had them in the shop. And they must have been the first commercial games of Britain, or possibly, I don't know. maybe.
I'll talk about some first. You were there in Liverpool when a service company called Bug got started. Did you have much involvement with them? They're quite famous because they released Manic Miner by Matthew Smith. Did you have some involvement with them?
Yeah, well, what I was doing at the time, I was working as a consultant for quite a few different people. I was working as a consultant for quite a few different people. One of whom was an office equipment company called DAMS, D-A-M-S, another one of which was Bugbite. Now, Bugbite, I got the work there because they'd employed Mark Butler and they'd employed Eugene Evans. And if you go and look at the succession of Bugbite inlay cards, you can see when I arrived, because they were like black and white photocopied, and then suddenly they're airbrushed, full colour, printed, you know, everything. And that was when I arrived.
From Bugbite, you went on to be there right at the start of Imagine. They had huge early success with a game called Arcadia, which perhaps some people in our audience will recall. Let's just get to it. How much money were you bringing in there, Bruce?
Okay. When we first started, there was no distribution in retail whatsoever. So we were selling mail order because it was the only way. And what I did is, because of working for DAMS, I understood about a newfangled idea called telesales. And what I did is I stole from DAMS their telesales manager, Colin Stokes, and two of their telesales girls. We got all the yellow pages for the whole of Britain and we worked through them. So I'd say to the girls, okay, we'll do photo shops, camera shops. And they would then do all the camera shops, bring every camera shop in Britain and say you ought to be selling our games. Or every newsagent, or whatever. So we used the yellow pages, and that is how games ended up in shops. There weren't games in shops before we did that exercise, and after that there were games in shops. That's what created the game industry in Britain, was using the yellow pages and using telesales. And the girls were on bonuses, and we eventually got the turnover up to, then we got two more telesales girls in who were multilingual, and we did the same in France, Germany, Spain, you know, across Europe. So we got the turnover then up to £1 million a month, and to give you an idea, these games were costing us a few pennies to make, and we were selling them for a few pounds to our customers. So it was virtually all profit. So that £1 million cost us, you know, £10,000 to do in terms of profit.
This nice work, Bruce. Would this perhaps explain the fact that you managed to buy, or supposedly buy, incredibly flash cars? Didn't you drive a Ferrari, Bruce? Is that correct?
Well, two, not at the same time. One and
two jets, two Ferraris. There was a famous story that appeared in the Daily Star, I believe, about Eugene Evans, who'd got this incredibly flash car and he was too young to drive. I'm always intrigued how the Daily Star found out about that. I mean, did you get in touch with them? Was this a good example of hyping up,
Would I do anything like that?
Tell us.
Of course. You know, what you're doing is you're creating an image to the world. And, you know, it's marketing. You decide the image you want to create. And then you issue press releases and you tell the press and you have stories that support the image, the story that you want to create. And the cars were, everyone was bought on hire purchase. So all you had to do was find find the deposit, and then it was just monthly payments. So it wasn't like we were spending a lot of money on the cars.
All right, okay. You sound like you're very proud that Imagine was one of the first companies that actually tried to run as a serious commercial business with, you know, artistic advertising and slick marketing. And I can understand you're proud of that. I just wanted to know the fact that Imagine has also become synonymous with hype, with excess, and with vaporware. Are you equally as ashamed that that's their legacy?
No.
Do you want to elaborate? Is that just part of the course then? That's what marketing's about?
I was just doing my job. You know, what other people were doing, you know, well, that's for them to answer for. But I was doing my job, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, well, everybody's sitting here, so something must have worked.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Paul, please can I turn to you? So tell us then, Paul, what were you doing before you came to make the Commercial Breaks documentary?
I was working in what was then called the Science and Features Department at BBC, which had responsibility for two main programmes, Tomorrow's World and Horizon. Tomorrow's World and Horizon. And we had sort of several other sort of major series that were going through at the same time, sort of a Scent of Man type connections. So it was all quite serious, with the exception of Tomorrow's World, which was the BBC One output, which was the sort of...
It does sound quite serious. So was it difficult to then sell to your bosses, I'd really like to make a programme about this emerging game scene?
Yeah, I mean, in those days, I mean, the BBC was quite a snobby place.
You've totally changed now since
Yeah.
then.
I don't work there anymore, so I wouldn't like to say. But it was quite difficult. I had originally wanted to make a programme about hackers and about hacking, but I couldn't get any interest in that at all. But then it so happened that my exec producer had this proposal which had gone through to make a series about industry, about business, which was a sort of spin-off from Tomorrow's World, which would look at the commercial aspects. We'd had a sort of go with that with another programme called The Risk Business, which had been on BBC One, which was a spin-off from Tomorrow's World. But this was a sort of adjunct. But again, it was quite difficult because at that time people weren't very interested in industry and business. It was there was only the money programme, and that was really about economics.
So tell us, how did you? I mean, I don't know. Were you a gamer yourself? You weren't playing Arcadia, I presume.
No, I mean, the reality was then, in those days, I mean, in the late 70s and early 80s, we used to have a Friday morning meeting after Tomorrow's World, which went on Thursday night. And I remember very clearly there came a point when people would start to groan when we suggested another microprocessor-based item, because they were like, it was becoming really... So I knew about computing. We didn't have them in the offices. I mean, we didn't use them. It was even pre the BBC Micro then, when talking about. So, I mean, I was interested in technology and had enough knowledge to be dangerous, but that was about it.
And so, when did you first hear about Imagine? I mean, what made you make the call, perhaps, to this emerging, slightly cocky Liverpool-based software house?
I didn't know about Imagine, but in the fashion of making a programme, I sort of conducted research all over. I very quickly found Crash magazine. I remember going to a computer club outside Manchester, which was a complete eye-opener because there were school kids there doing stuff, which was just beyond me. And it was sort of hopping at sort of 7 o'clock on a sort of wet sort of Tuesday evening. And Imagine sort of came along later. I mean, it was part of the buzz, and it was part of it. But I mean, I remember looking at Llama Soft and Ocean, you know.
Jeff Minter's here, actually. You can reacquaint yourself. So, you get in touch with Imagine.
And you go and film there. Can you tell us, what did you find on your arrival, which I think would have been sort of maybe spring '84, I'm thinking?
My lasting memories was a huge sort of office with not that many people in it and not a great deal going on. I mean, that was the impression I had. Bear in mind I'd been going to places like IBM, which was sort of huge and vast and very adult, and highly polished sort of operations, and we'd been sort of going to places that were then sort of the early days of supercomputers around Europe. So I mean, it wasn't terribly impressive actually.
What did you make of some of those key players? It was run or owned by Dave Lawson and Mark Butler. What did you make of that pair?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd sort of call them a bit fly. I mean, they both sort of kept a distance from me. They weren't. And there was this whole issue about the success of Arcadia, and then there were these new games, Bandersnatch, which I think when I first got there, I don't think it had a name. I mean, it was just sort of like secrecy, you know, everything was dead secret, you know. I mean, what I do remember very clearly was being given a sort of like it was a homemade badge that you were given at reception, which was sort of quarter-inch thick laminated plastic, which somebody had obviously sat up and cut out and stuck together with sort of imagined logo, you know, visitor on it. It looked like something off sort of a very early sort of Star Trek, you know. It was a sort of.
You haven't still got it, have you?
Well,
have you got
I don't
one,
think I
Bruce?
have.
Dare I ask, what did you make of Bruce?
Take your time now. Take your time.
Well, again, a bit. I mean, as he is now, I suppose. I mean, a bit sort of, you know. I mean, a bit sort of full of himself. Sort of you know, not one to sort of. I mean, you see, what I'm interested in is he's given us a figure of this £1 million. I'd be very sceptical.
Bruce, do you want to defend yourself there, Bruce? You know the figures.
There you go.
Just one more question before we show the film. Were you surprised how things went, Paul? We're going to show the film in a moment, but were you surprised how things went, or did you sense in that first meeting, hang on, this is not going to end well?
Yes, I did. And what was slightly, I suppose, serendipity was I'd been talking to David Ward at Ocean, and I'd sort of taken a plan B, which is I would divide my film between Ocean in Manchester and Imagine in Liverpool. And yeah, I mean, I had a sort of a premonition that things were going to go slightly, you know, tits up, because when we came back from lunch on the day of the sort of the bailiffs walking in, I do remember saying to the cameraman, right, you know, turn over, because we were shooting on film then. You know, I want the camera running so that we picture and sound sync. You know, the minute the doors of the lift open.
What a perfect intro. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to show commercial breaks documentary on this screen, which hopefully, yeah, you'll see, okay. It's about half an hour long, and then we're going to come back about both Bruce and Paul giving some reflections, having seen that. Have you seen it recently, chaps?
Yeah.
A video, right, that'll be interesting then. And I'll also throw questions out from the floor, so there'll be plenty of time for you to quiz both the chaps. So for now, thank you. I'm hoping you're going to get this to work. Chaps, can we get some seats for these chaps so they can sit and watch it? Right. So enjoy the film, and we'll talk afterwards.
Chip Shop!
And last week's number 1 down to number 2, Underworld from Ultimate.
Britain's number 1.
This Christmas, we'll spend over £30 million on home computer games. This highly competitive business is flooded with thousands of software fantasies. This is the story of two companies, both searching for the magic ingredient which will make their game a Christmas hit. Imagine Software only started making computer games 2 years ago, but by early 1984, their turnover is already millions of pounds a year. Games like Arcadia have brought their founders instant success and rich rewards. Mark Butler is just 23. But fast cars are the style for everyone at Imagine, and fantastic salaries for the star programmers.
I used to go outside, I had to spend my money, get on your bus and ride. I used to go out dancing, put on my high heel shoes, get in my short black Chevy, go on a downtown cruise.
Right, we hope you all enjoyed that. It's a pleasant reminiscing. I'm not sure how much pleasant reminiscing there was over this side of the table. So I'm going to throw a few questions to the chaps in turn, and then I'll be coming amongst you and you can quiz them yourself. First, Bruce, I managed to find a clip from a magazine there. The company is up shit street, Bruce Everiss. Bruce, at what point did you actually realise that Imagine really was up shit street?
I think when I knew that the Mega Games... I think when I knew that the Mega Games just really weren't going to appear.
Did they ever get very far? I mean, we were all told, you talked about the hype there and not being able to deliver. How near were they?
Okay, but there was a fundamental problem at Imagine, in that David Henry Lawson, who was in charge of all product development, didn't believe in having any discipline or management of development staff. He believed the creatives should be left to create. So I can imagine what his children were like. His children were just feral monsters. And so the guys who were making the games really weren't doing very much. So it wasn't going anywhere.
Fair enough. I understand the actual Mega Games. Actually, you make a big point, or that film makes a point about piracy. And I think you've since made a big point about what affected Imagine so much was piracy. Didn't the actual Mega Games actually grow out of an anti-piracy idea?
Yeah, 100%. What happened was that we knew what was happening. We employed lots of kids under something called the Youth Opportunity Programme. We had them all over the company, 16-year-old kids. And they came to us and they said, all our mates aren't buying games anymore, they're just copying them from each other. So we knew that the market had disappeared. We tried bringing the price down of our games, the retail price down, and the retailers just said, you can't. You're dead if you try to do that. So that was one mechanism we tried. We wrote an open letter to all the magazines, saying to the magazines, look, piracy will kill this industry, stop it. We tried lots and lots of different things. We went to metallic inlay cards, metallic ink on inlay cards, so that they couldn't be easily scanned, so for to stop commercial counterfeiting. But it was terrible. W.H. Smith's had a very soft returns policy. So people go and buy a game from W.H. Smith's, take it home, copy it, and then take it back for the return. And W.H. Smith's was sending us truckloads of games that were perfectly good. Tens of thousands of pounds worth on each truck. So then, because of my background in proper computing before, with data pool services, I knew that commercial software used something called a dongle. A dongle is something that plugs into the back of the computer when you buy, which the software recognises, which stops the piracy. So I said to the guys, hey look, because on the Spectrum the bus comes out of the back. So I said, let's just put a few capacitors, a few resistors onto a card, put a plastic, thing around it, stick it on, and then make the software look for it before it'll run. Then everybody has to buy the little bit of plastic to get the game to work, so you'll get zero piracy. So David Henry Lawson, another one of his things about not only having no discipline, he always wanted to take things to the nth degree. So he said, well, we can do more than just put a few resistors and capacitors. And I said, well, yeah. The Z80 had a maths coprocessor that was available. So I said, why don't you put the maths coprocessor on? Because they're fairly cheap. And then our code can look for the maths coprocessor on the bus and actually use it within the game and make the game more powerful. Oh no, he wanted to do far more than that. He wanted to have, very fast paging memory. So, it just went. The aspirations became bigger and bigger during the course of the project.
I'm intrigued because you do now make a big point that piracy really affected Imagine. We managed to find this article straight after the collapse that you wrote, I think, for your computer, where it says, many blame piracy for the collapse. Imagine's operations director, Bruce Everiss, disagrees. So I'm intrigued because when we watched that film, which is cracking, and we'll come to Paul in a minute, is that, come on, there was a lot of excess, there was TT bike teams, and actually, to be fair, Bruce, you were there at the end. You actually were there as the ship sank, and I think credit to you for that. But we can't just, other things must have gone wrong.
If there'd been no piracy, the company would have kept going. But the company was weak, not for the reasons that you state, actually. One thing was we had a contract to create games for Marshall Cavendish for part work, and that fell through, but all the staff we'd taken on for that we should have gotten rid of, but we kept them all. So our wage bill, which was far bigger than the car bill or anything else, was more than double what it should have been, you know, because we didn't get rid of the people. And then, as I say, David Henry Lawson didn't believe in having any discipline. People could roll in for work when they want, go when they wanted, and so on. So they were the problems, not the cars. But if there hadn't been any piracy, the company would have kept going. Now that article, very simple, I'll tell you about that article. If something happens in politics, you don't read the same story in The Guardian and in the Mail, do you? Because the Guardian wants...
read the Mail, so...
Well, the Guardian wants a Labour government in as soon as possible, and the Mail never wants us to have another Labour government again, so they tell a different story. Now, I'm a marketing person, and in that article, I was trying to hammer my co-directors as hard as I possibly could.
There was certainly a major falling out, and I just want to come over to Paul there, we will come back to you, is that you captured something there, Paul, you really captured a moment. Bruce mentioned that staff, there was no discipline, could come and go. We love the scene, coming back from the pub. Obviously you were there, did you go to the pub with them? Were you an embedded journalist that went to the pub with them and then returned to capture that fantastic moment where the bailiffs are there?
Yes, I did, and actually I just noticed that I am in the shot. I was the first person trying to open the door, and the bloke said, "Get out, get out."
Oh, is that you?
And that's me, yeah, I had hair then.
Sorry.
But, yeah, no, see, it's interesting memory. I mean, I say I haven't watched the programme for a long time, so there's certain things in there which I can't remember until I saw it. If you'd asked me, I wouldn't have remembered. In particular the school, and having mentioned about the Manchester Computer Club. But yeah, you see, my memory of it, my impression of it was that it was chaotic. It wasn't managed, and it. You see, where I would sort of ask questions is, if you were making that amount of money, $1 million, where did it all go? You know, that you couldn't finance Bandersnatch. And why have somebody sitting in reception who's owed 50,000 for duplicating, which presumably is not a new bill, it must have been an old bill. You know, what happened to the money? Because you said it didn't go on the cards if you didn't buy them. You had too many staff. But you know, the revenue, if you take David Ward's figures for Ocean, I mean, the revenue was you know, you're getting about £1.50 to take your profit and your merchandising and your distribution costs out. So I mean, his figures, I mean, maybe 50p a cassette you were making.
Right, well, what Paul saw was the end game of the company, and that was over a year. It was a year and a half since the company was at its height. So it was it was over a year since the piracy became so big. So, you know, we'd had a year where our outgoings had exceeded our incomings. And what Paul saw was the very dire and not very pleasant, you know, end of the company. He never saw the good days.
Musical microphone. Fair enough. Paul, I want to go back to you because, of course, Imagine was only half the story there. We did see Ocean then, which, of course, a lot of us will have bought many of their movie licenses, I'm sure, in the past. I just wanted to ask you, how different were things at Ocean? That was half the film.
Oh, I mean, totally different environment. I don't know what David Ward's background was, but I think he'd been a sort of trader. I think he was in the rag trade, actually. But he was a consummate businessman. And a very small operation. I mean, I think it was just that one corridor in his office. I mean, that was it. I mean, like always, television makes it look much bigger than grander than it was. Very small, very professional, very sort of, you know, profit orientated.
I thought it was quite touching there because we saw Jonathan Joffa Smith bringing his game.
Oh yeah, Put.
Yeah, passed away.
Yeah.
last year, I think it is now. So again, did you sense that you were really at the stop something there, seeing just kids coming off the street, being given £1,000 for their game?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing that I had forgotten. If you look at those figures for the warehouse, they were taking 100 a month, they were discarding 500 games a month, and all of these were being produced by people practically at home. They were actually bringing them in. And I remember in the early days, Smith's talked about this, people would turn up at their back door with a box with 200 games and sell them. Like I said, how it started before the distributors got going. So it was incredibly sort of home-based, and David and Ocean really built the business on the back of that. I mean, people just bringing stuff in. It was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
I mean, it's quite a poignant ending to your programme there, because of course Ocean ended up buying the Imagine name and releasing games through it for several years after, so it was rather poignant. Yeah. Just last question, then I'll go to the audience. For both of you, this looking back at that documentary, does it bring back good memories or bad ones?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had hair. That was great to have. No, it was a fantastic time. I mean, the thing is that you get very, very blasé about these things. You don't recognise at the time how significant they were. It's like when you get your first Apple computer, or your Sinclair watch. You're totally unaware. But it was a fantastic time. But as I say, looking back at it, I just think how incredibly blasé I was about what we were doing and what was happening.
Thank you. Well, Bruce, what about you?
Imagine was fantastic. I learned a huge amount, and I worked with some really fantastic people, and we did a great deal to establish the industry in Britain. And I mean, it was one interlude in my life, but overall, I have to say that the home computer industry and the games industry has been fantastic all my life. It's provided just so much excitement. It even is now the same as it did way back in 1978. It was just so much fun.
Bruce has still got the buzz. And on that note, I am going to ask for questions to the audience, and I will actually come down here and bring you the microphone. So in the time-honoured fashion, if you want to stick your hand up, I will come over to you, and we've got some sort of... So chaps, you both got microphones, yeah? Okay, let's go down here. Yes, young man.
Hi, Bruce. Hi. As a fan of Game Alchemist, how did it differ for you when it went back to, and what kind of plan was it?
Well, I worked with him because, for about 3 years. He was one of the first people to join right at the very beginning, just after the beginning, when we started recruiting. He's a very quiet person, but under the quietness he was very self-assured, and he knew what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. He was always very self-assured. So he had this, strange thing that people would meet him and think that he was shy, which he appeared to be, but I say underneath he had this strength. And I always got on very, very well with him indeed. He enjoyed the publicity a lot, even though you'd think he was such a shy person that he wouldn't enjoy it. And then the whole nature of what happened to him was just incredibly sad. And, all of us at the time were just shocked, totally shocked and mortified.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, over here.
Question for Paul. I read some reminiscences from Jonathan Smith about the documentary, and I think he was mentioning how there was a certain amount of TV magic. So the scene where he supposedly walked into the offices with his new game was a bit of a reenactment. And I think the impression I got from what he was saying was that the documentary was originally essentially going to be about Imagine, and it was really when Imagine collapsed that left you with sort of half a documentary, and it was sort of Ocean was brought in at that point. Is that fair, or is that...
No, I mean, yes, I mean, I mean, documentary, we could spend a couple of days discussing it, but I mean, you'll always reconstruct some things, or you'll ask people to walk back in, because you can't cover it all at the same time. I mean, nothing in any documentary is ever weird. Unless you're there 24/7, but not really. No, I mean we had imagined as our focus, but I sensed very early on that it wasn't going to fill half an hour of television. So I was looking around for something else to basically make a compare and contrast with, and decided on Ocean. But it certainly was the case that the story changed when the shutters came down. Imagine, of course, but I had no way of knowing, of course, that David Walker was going to buy Imagine. That just made a convenient sort of close to the program. But yeah, I mean, I think most of it was pretty genuine. I mean, we did con some things up simply to yeah.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Over here, yeah.
Question to Bruce, really.
Talk into it, maybe.
Yeah, I'm talking. Question is, reflecting on what's happened in the past, would you possibly imagined it's now the industry has become this multi-billion industry, video industry specifically? Looking back, you were there at the beginning, would you possibly imagine that it's now been you were crowing about units selling hundreds of thousands, and now we get multi-million sales in a day. So is something you predicted, or you saw it growing in that time, or was that where it is now, you can possibly imagine?
Right. I'm a firm believer in something called Moore's Law. And I also believe what Bill Gates said, in that people always have over-expectations for technological advancements in the short term, but underestimate technological advancement in the long term, because it's cumulative. So, I mean, if you go and read my blog, Bruce on Games, and you go and look at an article I wrote, say, 3 years ago or 4 years ago about smartphones, you will see that what I was writing at the time, that people were decrying, has actually happened. So, I'm not at all surprised. Not at all, no. In some ways, some areas, I'm very surprised that it's not advanced as fast as it could have. Like artificial intelligence has gone up a cul-de-sac and not delivered what it could. Gesture interfaces have taken a long time to appear. So, yeah, I've not been surprised.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Any more questions? I've got one over here, and then I've got one over there.
Hi, this is to Paul. You mentioned earlier on that you wanted to do a programme that focused on hacking. Is there anything that you remember about that you were specifically focused on? Was there any news items at the time?
No, excuse me, no, there wasn't. There was a book which I got from the States, which was an account of hackers, which I can't remember the title of now, but I think it was just called Hackers, which was an account of these very, very odd characters who had started phone phreaking and had then sort of gone into, hacking into computers. Which, given the era, which I think probably the book was published in about 1982, 81, perhaps, it was a completely new thing. But the other thing that was just, as an aside to that, which just struck me watching it, is that this actually all happened in the north of England, with the exception of the Wenner House in Guildford. And what was slightly strange for me was at that time, it's very significant now that the BBC's sort of got Media City in Salford, there was a big argument going on in the BBC at that time about something called the Ken House document, which was the building we were in, which was effectively a move by some producers to move lock, stock and barrel, the whole programming output, which would include us, to Manchester.
And there were howls of outrage from the sort of London end and the management that this was completely, crazy, mad idea to do. But I'm quite interested, I mean, as an observer now of my own thing, that in fact this industry was happening up here in the northwest in a big way, and that we actually represented that. As I say, it just struck me looking at it that there's actually nothing from the south of England apart from the distribution.
Thank you. Hit the north. Here you go.
We saw in a documentary a scene where the seller is suggesting that the price of the mega games could be as high as £40. Now, in hindsight, that just seems absolutely insane that a 1984 game could be sold for that much. So was that a serious commercial estimate, or was that just how much the hardware would have cost, or was it just flying the kites?
I agree with you. At the time, I said, this is because they took the hardware to the nth degree, and it would more than doubled the capabilities of a 48K Spectrum, what they were planning to do. So it was, it was basically a Sam Coupe, in effect, what they were doing. And so it made the Spectrum into a new machine, really. But as a game, it was just silly. That's why I wanted to put so much in the box, to give perceived value. So in there, you get a baseball cap and a t-shirt and all that sort of stuff. Then you think, oh, well, because people think a t-shirt's worth 15 quid, well then it costs 2 quid to make, So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Thank you, you're right. Well done. Okay, I've got a question over here. Challenge Annika.
Another question for Bruce. I'm interested in the two heads of the mansion, Dave Lawson, Mark Butler. I think Butler was more the programmer and was Lawson more the businessman. Can you tell me how it broke down from your point of view, and what did they go on to do after the mansion cost?
Right. Mark Butler came to me when I was my shop, my petition, as a salesman. He was a salesman. So Mark Butler was a salesman. That's it. And he then went to work for Bugbite as a salesman, and then he saw at Bugbite that there was a really, really good programmer called Mark Henry Lawson. So he said, let's leave and set up our own company. And that's all there is to it. So, but Mark Henry Lawson was an absolute genius programmer. Arcadia, both versions, he wrote in one day. So,
you're absolutely sure of that, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what. No, I wasn't there watching him. That's his claim. So, but they were both very, very young, and they both obviously learned a lot from the company. It was their first enterprise, and I think for their first enterprise, I think they did pretty damn well, really. They got to become by far the biggest game company in Britain in their first attempt, so you can't knock that. And Mark isn't in the games industry anymore. He married Heather Lamont from Rabbit Software, and they're doing things outside the industry. David Lawson, I think, is doing technical programming stuff, but outside the game industry. So, but I mean, they were really young. I mean, so I think it was fabulous.
Thank you. Take two more questions, or maybe. So I've got 1, 2, and over there, and over there. I think those 4 will sort of. So here you go.
Hi, this is a question for Bruce. Obviously, the mega game, the Bandersnatch, that was quite like a large step in an industry that was obviously it was just growing up from fledgling. What I want to know is, obviously, we're seeing today there's real problems with innovation in the games industry, like many sequels, things like that coming out because publishers know that's what's going to sell. Obviously, the problem with the finances, as was shown in the film, with not being able to get the money to fund the game. And do you think that was the fact that they weren't willing to take the risk in such a in an industry that was such fast paced already? Do you think that sort of set the scene for today?
Do you think that kind of model of struggling to get finance and relying on sequels, do you think you started that? Paraphrasing.
Well, we didn't do sequels.
Right, sorry. So I paraphrased that very badly. Go on, sorry. Again.
I more meant because the Bandersnatch was a new game, like obviously the title, the mega game, it was going to be something completely different in industry, that I got used to a certain kind of game. Was that the reason why you think it wasn't invested in, or was there another reason?
Well, I think that any potential investor who came along and saw the way that David Henry Lawson ran our development wouldn't invest. I think that's all there was to it.
Okay, that's a good chance. There you go.
Obviously, Bandersnatch used new, more complicated hardware to boost the abilities of the game. But what did the game actually physically do that was better than any other game? What did it actually do better? What kind of graphics and stuff did it use?
Can you answer that, Bruce? Did you actually see it?
I really haven't the faintest idea. I think that they were going to use paging, so they were going to use fast paging so they could move around within the game more quickly, and perhaps, like Mark said, to do better animation and have bigger characters. I think that was one key thing, was to have big characters. But I'm as bemused as you about what it was going to do, to tell you the truth.
Isn't that why the adverts were so abstract? Because you hadn't really got anything to show?
No, you could just hear me in there saying, I want meat. Give me some meat so I can show them it. So each month they said, well, it's going to be next month. So I said, all right, well, what do we do with our advertising space? It's all pre-booked. So I'd have to go and make something up. So I go and make something up, like reinforcements arrive, and then you get the reinforcements arrive advert. And then next month I say, okay, now what? And I say, no, it's another month away. So then I make up another idea, and it just happened month after month after month after month. And each time I had to think of another idea with nothing, It's like, it's just trying to market something, you don't know what it is. It's just impossible.
This one could go to both of you. If you could go back to 1984, to the person you were in that documentary, and give yourself one piece of advice about the future, what would you say to yourself?
Will it to do with your hair, Paul?
No, that's a lost cause. I think it would be, I would have looked much more seriously at technology, and in particular something like Apple and Microsoft and what they were doing, and looked at, from the point of view of, as an industry and as an investment, as a pension plan, what the likely. As I say, we were totally blasé. Another microprocessor. Oh God, So recognise what actually is happening and the potential for it. I think this is the key thing. Recognise the potential to make money, to create a business out of it. As I say, my lasting impression of it was being blasé about the whole thing, and in fact now you look at it, it's an enormous industry, absolutely enormous.
Bruce, what advice would you give to your young self?
Okay, I knew that it was going to go wrong, obviously from what you've all heard, quite a long time before it did go wrong. And I didn't bail out. Now, I wasn't a shareholder, and I could have bailed out, walked away with most of my reputation intact, and I could have walked into quite a few different companies which would have welcomed me. And that was the mistake I made, sticking with idiots, really.
Thank you.
This is a question for Bruce. Just really, if the company had got the investment back then, would Imagine still be going now, do you think? If you'd have had the money for Bandersnatch and Cyclops?
That's a very, very interesting question, I must admit. If somebody had invested, then they would have probably put put management in of the development, and then the games would have then come out and they would have worked. So if an investor came in and as part of their investment they made the company work properly, then the company would still be going. And not only would Imagine still be going, but then I think a lot of other game companies that died would also still be going, because then they would have followed the same route. They would have got investment and they would have put anti-piracy measures in. Because the only anti-piracy measures that ever worked was when consoles came along. Consoles are basically an anti-piracy dongle. That's all they are. There you go.
This question's for Bruce. Can you tell me how you decided which platforms to support? And why did you never really take to the Atari?
Well, it's the same today as it was then. I work for a company that was starting to make iPhone apps, smartphone apps, and we're making them for the iPhone, because that's where the market is. You know, we're not making them for Android. There's lots of Android phones out there, but nobody's really buying many Android apps. It was the same in my various phases at Codemasters, and it was the same then. You know, that you just make your product for the customers. You know, marketing is about, you know, finding a market and looking after that market, and that's all there is to it, really.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've just gone up to 5:30. It's time for the thank yous. A big thank you to World of Spectrum and Martin Cowell for helping us with the images. A big thanks to Dave Moore and all the organising team. A big thanks to you lot for coming. Enjoy the rest of the time. You can read more from Bruce and Paul in Retro Game issue 98. It just leaves me to say a very big thank you to BAFTA, who have kindly sponsored this event. And we have Dave Green here as well. So please have a round of applause for Paul and Bruce, but also Dave from BAFTA for supporting us.
I like to move it, bit.
Boss machines using 8080, and I studied it, and I thought, oh, they're opening computer stores. I'll do that, just like you do when you're young. So that's Microdigital opened in 1978 on the 31st of July, and we sold a kit computer called the NASCOM. We sold Samsung Benchmark 14s, which I got off Clive Sinclair, and we sold books. Books like crazy, you just wouldn't believe. Everybody was hungry for knowledge because everything was so new. And I imported the books in bulk from the States and sold mountains and mountains of books. And then memory, 4 or 6 memory chips, short run cassettes. We sold tens of thousands of short run cassettes, C15s. So there's lots of things we could do, and there was all sorts of things like the NASCOM kits had 1,200 solder joints on, so most of them didn't work. So we set up a fix-it service. You send us your NASCOM, whatever you've done to it, 50 quid, and we'll send it back to you working. And so that was a good profit centre. So we had fun.
You mentioned there that some of the computers you're selling involve doing 1,200 solder joints. I imagine you weren't getting kids wandering in buying these computers. It was actually coming into the shop.
There was a lot of people there who were radio and hobbyists, and they were quite keen. And then there was the people from academia. The Liverpool University had a very active microcomputing department, and they were very outgoing, and so they had a big involvement. And then they set up Liverpool Computer Club and stole from Downs their telesales manager, Colin Stokes, and 2 of their telesales girls, we got all the yellow pages for the whole of Britain and we worked through them. So I'd say to the girls, okay, we'll do photo shops, camera shops, and they would then do all the camera shops, bring every camera shop in Britain and say you ought to be selling our games, or every newsagent, or whatever. So we used the yellow pages, and that is how games ended up in shops. There weren't games in shops before we did that exercise, and after that there were games in shops. That's what created the game industry in Britain, was using the yellow pages and using telesales. And the girls were on bonuses, and we eventually got the turnover up to, then we got 2 more telesales girls in who were multilingual, and we did the same in France, Germany, Spain, across Europe. So we got the turnover then up to £1 million a month, and to give you an idea, these games were costing us a few pennies to make, and we were selling them for a few pounds to our customers. So it was virtually all profit. So that £1 million cost us, £10,000 to do in terms of product.
This nice work, Bruce. Would this perhaps explain the fact that you managed to buy, or supposedly buy, incredibly flash cars? Didn't you drive a Ferrari, Bruce? Is that correct?
Well, 2, not at the same time.
2 jets, 2 Ferraris. There was a famous story that appeared in the Daily Star, I believe, about Eugene Evans, who had got this incredibly flash car and he was too young to drive. I'm always intrigued how the Daily Star found out about that. I mean, did you get in touch with them? Was this a good example of hyping up
them in the shop? And they must have been the first commercial games of Britain, or possibly, I don't know, maybe.
Talking about some first, you were there in Liverpool when a certain company called Bug-Bite got started. Did you have much involvement with them? They're quite famous because they released Manic Miner by Matthew Smith. Did you have some involvement with them?
Yeah, well, what I was doing at the time, I was working as a consultant for quite a few different people. I was working as a consultant for quite a few different people. One of whom was an office equipment company called DAMS, D-A-M-S. Another one of which was Bug-Bite. Now, Bug-Bite, I got the work there because they'd employed Mark Butler and they'd employed Eugene Evans. And if you go and look at the succession of Bug-Bite inlay cards, you can see when I arrived, because they were like black and white photocopied, and then suddenly they're airbrushed, full colour, printed, everything. And that was when I arrived.
From Bug-Bite, you went on to be there right at the start of Imagine. They had huge early success with a game called Arcadia, which perhaps some people in our audience will recall. Let's just get to it. How much money were you bringing in there, Bruce?
Okay. When we first started, there was no distribution in retail whatsoever. So we were selling mail order because it was the only way. And what I did is, because of working for DAMS, I understood about a newfangled idea called telesales. And what I did is and people flew to the shop from all over Europe. So, we got, and people would come up from all over the UK driving to the shop to see it.
Sounds like it was a real meeting point. I'm interested in some of your employees that you had there. I understand that one of your employees was indeed Mark Butler, who went on to found Imagine. So what was that young lad like then?
I was a cocky, chirpy, self-confident salesman. I employed him as a salesman. I mean, I've seen him fairly recently. He's still the same Mark Butler that I first employed in the shop.
Right, and also understand again someone that we're going to see on this film later, Eugene Evans, who was one of the early coders for Imagine. So what was he doing then?
Well, I employed him when he was about 14 as the Saturday boy in the shop, to make the coffee and what have you. And of course now he's very senior at Electronic Arts in America.
The boy's done well for himself, for sure. Now, I would like to ask then, at what point did your shop actually start selling computer games then?
I don't think we ever actually... I went to California to see what the American computer stores looked like compared to ours. And they had something called an Apple, and at the back of the shop there was this notice board, and on this notice board were polythene bags, and in the polythene bags were cassettes, and these were games that people had made at home and were selling through the notice board in the computer store. And I think they were the first ever commercial computer games. And I bought a whole pile of those back, and we had
to record some of the key moments of that meltdown. And it came out as a documentary called Commercial Breaks, which we're going to be watching in a short time. I'm very pleased to welcome to Replay today Paul Anderson, who was the producer of that documentary, and also Bruce Everiss, who was the operations manager for Imagine through those heady days. So ladies and gentlemen, Paul and Bruce. Okay, Bruce, I'm going to start with you. Napoleon once described us as a nation of shopkeepers, and I believe that's exactly how you got into this computer games business, by setting up a shop at the end of the 70s in Liverpool called Micro Digital. What was it like running a shop at the end of the 70s when that was pre-Spectrum days? There wasn't very much to sell, surely.
Yes. I set up a computerised bookkeeping company. I'd set up a computerised bookkeeping company called Data Pool Services, Data, and it's in Liverpool. And then I started reading Computer Weekly, and there was all this stuff about this microcomputers happening in America, in California, and the S1